All right, joining us today is Patrick Park. He's a former ASU swimmer and a dear friend of ours. Patrick, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
So obviously, my introduction of you wasn't the best. So first question I'd like to ask you is tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into swimming. What has your swimming journey been like?
Yeah, I think it dates back to, man, like 4 years old. My older brother Peter, uh, we have the same story with swimming. So mom had to lie about her age growing up. So summer league, you typically have to be what, like 6 years old. And so I was 4 at the time and mom said, screw it, he's 6 years old. Go swim, go dive in. And so that's kind of the origin story. And I mentioned my brother Peter, and he was such a talented swimmer. And throughout his college, high school, college career. So, it's really, following his footsteps, right? And it was high school, college, whatever. He went to the petty school. I went to the petty school in high school. Mom said growing up, hey, if you want to get faster, you got to move out to the West Coast. That's what she kept saying. I didn't know what she meant at the time. But, when it came to college recruiting, she reached out and they offered me a full ride. And the rest is history. The 4 years at ASU was an All-American. Went to Olympic trials. Don't ask me how I knew Bob Bowman was going to be my coach my sophomore year, but that happened. Yeah, I ended up breaking the 200 fly score record, and yeah, trained with I consider the greatest of all time with Michael Phelps, and yeah, hell of a swim career, man. A lot of practices, 10,000 hours for sure.
And during that time, when we were talking a little bit before getting on this call, you'd mentioned that you've been coaching uh, and around really quality coaches through your history. So, when
Yeah.
did you start getting into coaching as well as being a swimmer throughout college and afterwards?
Yeah, I want to highlight that. I had amazing coaches. So, it was Coach Lucy, who was a six-time national champion in the 200 butterfly. She was my age group coach, and she was just such a good technical coach, right? And that really set the foundation for my swimming. I was never the biggest guy in the pool, but the stroke was there, the technique was there, and I think Coach Lucy for that. And then I had Coach Greg Reed. He swam at Harvard. He was on the U.S. national team at some point. Yeah, Coach Greg. He did things back when the Power Tower first came out. I remember he bought those, and so I tell these swim parents all the time. I got very lucky with my coaches, and Coach Dan Kessler. He's the guy that recruited me to ASU, and then later on again Bob, right? He was kind of my coach there at the end. But where the coaching came from, I would say because I had such a great coach in Lucy, when I got to high school, we were always contenders for it wasn't a state title with private schools. It's called Easterns. And so that was a very, very big swim meet for us. And so, very, very competitive guy. And I knew that if we want to win a championship, we gotta make the teammates better too. And so it's so funny. I think my coaching actually started in high school. I'll start coaching my own teammates, right? I would have a friend that say, "Hey, how are you doing your underwater kicks? Like, how should I do my turn?" I know there are certain practices. Like after practice, I'll teach a teammate how to do a start, right? And who knows? Maybe I could have been wrong at the time, but I just knew that I had a passion for, just coaching really early on, just based off of helping my teammates. Really.
That's awesome, man. As a former swim coach, like when the bug bites you about coaching, it kind of like encompasses you. It like just gets in your DNA, I think, a little bit. So, we know you have this amazing, we'll call it a side hustle, but you really have this amazing kind of side business that you run. But like, what do you do for your actual day job today? Like, coaches and swimming was a big influence on your life and it continues to be. What does Patrick Park do from 9 to 5 right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I ended up going to finance right out of college. And so did the whole finance background, and then New York City was great, but it was also dark and gray. And so I said, you know what, let's use this as an excuse to move back to Arizona and go back to sunshine and rainbows. And so I actually continued my finance career there. And then I got involved with medical device company. It's a neuro med tech startup. It was founded in 2016. And so that's the day job. But I quickly realized after, working with Thomas and developing Swim Warrior and, my passion for self-starting. And so we also built a payment processing company as well. So Chris, it's a few different jobs, a few different jobs right now.
And y- when we first met, it's funny too. You say sunshine and rainbows. Definitely a lot of sunshine, and not sure about the rainbows in Phoenix. But you gotta tell me when the last time you've seen a rainbow there. But when we first met, we met on the deck of the Jewish Community Center in Scottsdale. And after we met and started just talking about coaching, I was able to kind of recruit you in, and we started coaching together. And something that like just really impressed me early on meeting you was learning about your private lesson business.
Mm.
And obviously, that's really the purpose of today's talk is to really dive into, how did you do that? How did you set up a successful side business that you've now been able to run for, correct me if I'm wrong, probably, 10 years plus now at this point, or at least approaching 10 years. And you've got a great book of business. So really to start, like, how much does that, like, what does that entail in terms of the time commitment, and how much have you been able to earn, kind of annually with maybe at the peak of creating this side business for yourself? Because really the purpose of this conversation is to unpack that so that we can share with other coaches who might be looking to do the same.
Yeah, well, I wrote a couple notes down, so just help me out, keep me on track, right? And so, the way you asked that first part of the question of, how did you build this? It reminds me of the podcast by Guy Raz, How I Built This. It's an NPR podcast and such a good one. And at the end, he always asks the same question of, how much do you credit to luck versus just you and skill? And a lot of these self starters, founders, they say luck. And I considered myself very, very lucky, and I'll kind of go back to the genesis of it all. When I first moved back here in 2019, my my college buddy, who we ended up being All-American teammates. We're on the same relay together. Lived in his house for a few years, right? Thomas, you met him, Reed, right? And so Reed actually had an internship in New York City. So we did this flop, right? It was so crazy. And so I was living in his house, and he's like, "Hey, I'm actually walking away from a swim coach job here at the village right off of Camelback. And, would you mind just subbing in for about 2, 3 months while I'm in my internship?" I'm like, this is great. I have access to a pool. I could do my lifts. This is fantastic. And so I think I got lucky in that way of I had an excuse to coach. But that's really how it started. And then this is where I say, how did I get lucky? Well, I feel like Thomas, like you and I talk about all the time. It's how do you position yourself? So I'm not saying don't go to the pool expecting to get swim clients. It doesn't happen that way. They teach you something medical device. If you want new business with certain surgeons, you just have to be in the hospital, right? It's the same thing with swim coaching. If you want to do private lessons, guess what you have to showcase? Put the goggles on, put the cap on, and just start swimming, right? Eventually, you're going to strike up a conversation. You're going to meet someone new in the locker room. You never know, but you kind of have to just be there, right? So, that's really how it started. And through the connections through finance, through the gym, someone even labeled me as, I swear, Pat, you're the mayor at the village, especially that backyard pool. It seems like you just know everyone, right? And it's so incredible how lucky you can become just by putting yourself out there and at times even inserting yourself for certain conversations. So that's really how it started. And then I think just building trust. Once you get about 2 to 3 swimmers that you're coaching consistently, that's when you start asking for new business. You establish that trust, right? And so you can just kind of build it up from there. I think the second part of your question was what more so of the charging piece.
Well, like how
Like,
big did that that business get for you? So,
Yeah.
you started it up and you did it kind of like the grassroots effort there. But like at its peak, what did that look like for you, both work wise and financially?
Yeah. So, at the time that was a finance gig still. So I had to work the day job Monday through Friday. And so I really just reserved private lessons for the weekend. So at its peak, it was uh 12 lessons on Saturday and Sunday. For now about an hour 15. And it started off by charging $100 per session. Uh, Sometimes we'll go over the 60 minutes, but it'll be per session. And then eventually, when I got to capacity, I actually got this advice. I was coaching a camp at ASU, and I was kind of complaining to one of the ASU coaches, and Bob kind of stuck his head into the room. It's like, why don't you just start charging more, man? It's like you deserve it. You're an All-American athlete. You went to trials a couple times. Like this is the common, the thing that we do as coaches, like get what you deserve. It's okay. It's okay to upcharge. So I ended up increasing to $150 a session and thinking, oh man, I'm gonna start dropping off. People aren't gonna come to me for coaching anymore. It's actually the exact opposite. The guys that I was coaching, they actually appreciated that. They wanted to pay and they actually want to send new business as well. So back at its peak, it was 6 lessons on Saturday, 6 lessons on Sunday, and eventually, I had to create this rule of only 3 sessions in a row, either 3 in the morning and then 3 sort of in the mid afternoon, night, and get a good break in between. But that was at its peak. I was coaching at an outdoor pool. I was literally burnt out from the 100 to 20-degree weather. Yeah. So at a certain point, and Thomas knows this, where I called him about it. It's like, man, I'm getting burnt out from coaching. I really need a systematic way to build this. So I eventually went out and talked to a couple of my buddies, and they became contract coaches. So I was able to kind of share the wealth there.
That's awesome. So I'm just gonna do a little back of the napkin math here, right?
Yeah.
Like so people truly understand this. Like if you're doing 6 lessons in a day at $150 a piece, that's $900 in a day, right? Multiply that by two, that's $1,800 in a weekend. Like even if you only work half the weekends in a year, you're clearing close to 40K in a year
Mhm.
on more or less a side hustle job, a weekend job, right? Um, that's amazing. And obviously you have the credentials, but I think a lot of people don't understand of like really valuing yourself to your client base. Like you're establishing your own value and going from 100 to 150 actually increased kind of the demand for your services almost because it was like all of a sudden they're like, oh man, this must be really good. It's $150 an hour. Like this guy's good, right? Um, it's like this weird perceived value that if you charge more, it's more valuable. But that's really awesome. And I don't think a lot of coaches realize how much money they could make on private lessons, especially young entrepreneurial coaches. This is a way to pad that bank account when the coaching industry doesn't pay a whole lot.
Yeah, exactly. I would say you have to sacrifice something to
Hmm.
to maintain because the consistency is key. And now I'm trying to put myself in the framework of these club team coaches. They've got meets on the weekends. I know a coach right now here locally. He's coaching about 7, 8 hours a day. So he's coaching all day, and I tell people all the time, just one lesson really takes it out of me emotionally, right? Just like I think I just have a big heart because think about what you're doing for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Some people think, wow, you got 60 minutes, you got so much time. The way I phrase it is, I only have 60 minutes, where it's my job to make sure that light bulb shines bright. Right? If that moment doesn't happen, guess whose fault that is? That's on me. That's the fault of the coach, right? So I only got 60 minutes. It's pretty cool as a coach, you have to be able to read the room. And that takes a little bit of time. You got to build that trust. But yeah, I'm just kind of going back on what you said, Chris, where it to be able the numbers, the napkin as you reference, like that's great. That number is big, it's nice, it's a nice side gig, but you got to be consistent and you got to sacrifice some time, right? You really got to sacrifice a lot of your time
Yeah.
to make it work. So as long as you're internally able to have that expectations and level set with yourself, you can do it. You can. You just got to make the time for it.
But having been a coach, do you think like, I coached masters for a long time, and you have morning practices if you have senior groups potentially. It's like if you fit in an hour after morning practice, right? Or you fit in the hour before your afternoon practice starts, like 2 lessons a day, 4 days a week, and you're still making, as a swim coach, significantly impacting your take home pay. When you start talking about, a 25 or 30 or 50% increase in their pay, like it can become pretty significant pretty quickly.
Chris, I wish you gave me that advice back in 2019 because basically you're saying, hey, why don't you just coach a lesson a day, right? And just spread it out throughout your week. For me, I'm just go big or go home. Let's just allocate all the time on Saturday, Sunday. At the time that it just made sense in my head.
Mhm.
Just weekends are for swimming, Monday through Fridays. Because for me, whenever I do something, I gotta go all in. But it's exactly what you said. In coaching, here's what I've picked up. At some point, you can do this in your sleep, right? If you're a good coach, right? You can just kind of do this. You can I tell people sometimes I could look away and I could hear the water slap a certain way. I'm being like, that's not the right freestyle. Like you could get to that point, right? So what's stopping you to doing an extra lesson just right after your 2 hour practice? Nothing's stopping you. I would say there's maybe the logistics with lane space, but I would say most of these coaches, they do have the lane space. They just got to figure out that time, and maybe it costs $5 a lane. So just figuring
Yeah,
out if
I'd
that's
like
the
to, we're planning on asking you about like pool usage and how you get access to pools. And so hold off on that for a second.
yeah.
But well, because I think you have a very creative method of, gaining access into facilities. And now your newest situation is like really ideal. But before diving into that, when we first met and I learned about this private lesson business that you were doing, at the time you were a high school coach and you were also coaching at the Village, like you mentioned previously. But joining the JCC was joining a club team at the time that you weren't coaching a club team. And I think in most cases we might see those club athletes as the ones that would be primarily in the market. But I think your spread of clients, it hits a few different categories. So could you tell us a little bit like who are your clients and maybe what's like a percentage breakdown in terms of, USA swimmers or high school swimmers versus adult fitness, masters, triathlete swimmers?
Yeah, I would say 30% 18 and below. And I actually give myself I try not to coach anyone below 7, 8 years old. I think there's other better coaches for that they can go into the water, and it requires a lot of patience. Maybe that says something bad about me, but I just know my strengths. My strengths are age group swimmers, and they know all four of their strokes, and I could just pinpoint their technique. And so I would say about 30%, which I think is a lot lower. And then the rest is just triathletes, Ironman, people just looking to swim. So it's you would assume that I would coach more USA swimming type of athletes, but actually quite opposite.
That's interesting because if you think about like those two client bases, right? Like your USA swimmer is already in the water for practices 5, 6 times a week, maybe more. And like there's a certainly like ability and willingness to pay with that demographic group, right? They're already investing a lot into swimming. So they might not necessarily have the funds to invest in, consistent lessons. Maybe they'll come and get like a start session with you or a butterfly session with you. But like the triathlete and the master swimmer, though, like a lot of times they have the ability and the willingness to pay you for your time at where you
Yes.
value it on a consistent basis, right? So understanding those, I think there's two different market segments and there's two different customer groups is really important. And like, how did you grow? Like, obviously, the youth swimmers, the USA swimmers under 18, that's kind of like a very obvious connection of just you being a swimmer and the parents are really paying for your expertise as well as a role model in that instance, I think. but like the triathletes, how did you get into connecting with triathlon groups?
Yeah, I would say word of mouth, but I feel like I've met most of these people through just talking to them, right? And also keep in mind I was in a lot of different things, right? Payment processing, swim warrior, got the finance job at the time. Now we're working with surgeons with the neuro job, and just a lot of different things mean a lot of different people, right? And so, and again, Chris, I think I got very lucky with even living here in Arizona. It's a very active state where they're constantly exercising, they're hiking, and I don't mean to sound a certain way towards triathletes, but a lot of these triathletes, tremendous athletes, they're excellent runners, excellent bikers, and the swimming, typically the swimming, let's just say they need more improvement in that area. And so that's where I came in. So I think there's a lot of these triathletes just wanting lessons. You just kind of have to go out there and find them. So again, put on the cap and goggles. I actually had to ask Coach Logan Herka at ASU. He's the assistant coach there now. I was like, hey, can you grab me a couple ASU swim caps? Because mine keep breaking. And so, once you start wearing that ASU cap and you're just doing some laps, someone's going to start talking to you too.
So for an age group coach, maybe a full-time coach associated with the team, I can see how that wearing like the cap of a local team could also be a conversation starter for
Yeah.
people that are in the swimming world. So I think your advice there absolutely, is applicable for any type of coach. It's just conversation starter, right? There's some possible commonality there. When we talked about this before, you'd mentioned, some of those soft skills that are important in striking up conversations. What are some of those other areas or some moments that coaches might be able to capitalize on in terms of trying to just strike up a conversation? It seems so easy when you just say, strike up a conversation, but it really tends to be like that's the starting point of building a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And maybe I'm more of a extrovert, and so it's things might be a little bit easier for me, but for others that might be a little bit more difficult. Here's the cheat sheet. So I would say if you're in the locker room, right, and you guys are just getting changed, like, hey, how was your swim? Right? Like what'd you swim today? Right? Any backstroke in there? Like what do you typically like to do? Right? And then they'll start kind of bragging about, oh, I did a 500 straight today. I swam 20 laps. They're like, that's awesome, right? Or you could do more of the personal approach of actually looking at their stroke. You're like, man, I really like that streamline. Like that's a really good streamline. Or hey, that extension, like you've got a really good body line up on top of the surface, right? Feed them a compliment, right? Make them feel good, right? Just start from there. Everyone loves compliments.
You're just being a nice guy.
100%.
And then from there, they're going to obviously ask about you. Right. And like, that's when you can talk about what you do and be like, oh, yeah, I give lessons sometimes. And lo and behold, like, can I get your number? Can we connect? Especially triathletes, they're always looking for, a quick fix and a way to get faster in the water.
Yeah, I'll even add if there's a more serious swimmer in there, or you could tell they're a triathlete just by their how aggressive they're swimming. And I always tell, and you can see most of these like non-swimmers, for whatever reason, this sport of swimming, if you didn't grow up swimming, it's very hard to get the feel for the water. And you could tell these triathletes based off of like how hard they're swimming, or maybe their feet are just dragging on the bottom of the pool, right? Because they have no like buoyancy whatsoever. They're just going raw strength. And so you just give them one little pointer. It's like, hey, have you thought of rotating just a little bit instead of twisting your neck? Feel like you're in like a twisty chair. You're kind of rolling your body to take that breath. It's like, pff, whoa, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, if anything, if you just give them a little bit, they're so thankful. That's so special about the swimming community. I found that they're very thankful and very, very welcoming. So you give something just a nugget of wisdom, they're able to give you the whole thing.
And like you said, I love how amazing it is when you're dealing with like adult swimmers who, maybe didn't swim growing up. A lot of basic fundamental work is what they need, which then actually makes that task quite a bit easier. You're not working at a super high level where you're thinking like opportunity cost of the stroke and really getting into the minutia. We're talking about someone who's potentially, just their body position is off, and it's just being able to
Yeah.
correct that and show them how to use tools and equipment that they maybe don't really understand how to like get the most out of, especially that stuff that's just at the pool already. So segueing now into what I was asking kind of previously, so a lot of this you mentioned before, you meet these people at pools anywhere, right? Like
Yeah.
I spent so much time at the JCC and I kind of felt like I become that same type of person at the J where I just like knew everyone that was
The
around. And
mayor.
yeah, yeah, the mayor of whatever pool that, and I think most coaches probably have a very similar type of thing going on for them, right? You spend so much time at this pool, people always see you. At some point, people are going to come up and talk to you. And and that, provides a lot of opportunity. I had a lot of people at the JCC that just over time would be like, "Hey, I'm looking for lessons," and it would be, adult swimmer. Um, you have been around a lot of pools, and you've also done a lot of private lessons at a variety of different pools. And I
Mhm.
could tell from the moment that I met you that right from the beginning, top of mind, knowing that pool space is limited, and that's something we always hear about in the industry. Like, there's just not enough pool space.
Yeah.
How have you gone about just, like, navigating that, especially when you're not associated with a team or a club team that has a dedicated pool space? And even in that case, a lot of club teams could be renting that space out. So you still might have to be thinking in terms of how do you yourself, as someone who wants to start a private lesson program, how do you navigate finding pool space?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a tough one because for certain pools, they have their own set of rules. And I would say a very, I guess, like a consistent answer to this, Thomas, is like you can go to like the local community pool and they might even offer it for free. It's like, hey, yeah, just sign this form and you can start doing lessons. Oftentimes, I've seen the $5 or $10 per lane if you want to do a private lesson. And then there are some pools that you have to do everything. You have to, pay them for the hour, but also you have to have your own liability insurance. So I went through all of that. And so, you know, I got lucky again. I think I've been throwing that out there, but you can also, what do they say about luck and opportunity, right? There's some kind of story and analogy there, right? And so when I was apartment hunting, I was looking at pools. I was like, this pool looks big enough for lessons. And it was actually a 2-lane indoor pool, like right here at this apartment. And I was like, this is fantastic. Only people that live here can use it. It's a private gym. And so that's the current setup that I have. But I know most people don't have that. So if you don't, then check out your local community pool first. Get to know the front desk gal, right? Talk to him or her. Make sure you don't piss them off, right? And just make sure you get the connection to whoever the aquatics director is. Talk to the aquatics director, as everyone knows, like they're the decision maker. So you could probably work something out. And as long as you're, someone that comes off a person of trust and you can talk a little bit of shop with them of what your expectations are and what your intentions are, yeah, hopefully you can strike up a deal of being able to do lessons. I would even go back on the soft skills. When you go up to the front desk, it's intimidating, right? You go into a pool that maybe you don't know. Maybe you call them on the phone and they hung up on you a couple times. Just my advice is don't get discouraged. If the front desk person says no, who is that person to say no? They don't make the decisions at that pool, right? So just when you get there, when you get to the front desk, the call to action isn't asking to do lessons there. They're not the right person to ask. The call to action is, can you introduce me or give me a name or an email or a number that I can call for the aquatics director, right? So there's stages, right? For every level, there's a different call to action, right? when you get to the quiets director. It's not instantly talking about lessons, lessons. No, it's like, hey, how can I help? Right? What can I do to have consistent lane space? Pat, come to think of it, we do need a coach on Sundays. Would you able to just coach a master's practice on Sunday? That way you have access to the pool and maybe afterward you can squeeze in some lessons. Oh, that'll be great. That's actually exactly what I'm looking for. And there you go. Now you have a free membership. Right. So there's a little bit of give or take. If you just take all the time, you don't invest, nothing's gonna happen. Right. I think the reason why I got so lucky, I invested in the people. I want to spend time with these people. I'm going out to lunches, dinners. I'm getting to know their significant other, their families, their kids. And guess what? If I coach a triathlete, this has happened many, many times. If I coach a triathlete, I might end up coaching their kids and then eventually their grandkids. That was more recent, right? So it's crazy how that could just trickle down like that. But you gotta invest in the people, right? And going back, Thomas, just don't get discouraged on asking. Just ask. Shoot your shot. Who knows?
That's awesome, and that's amazing advice. And so I think we're already diving into the unofficial Patrick Park playbook for building a successful private swim lesson program side hustle that can make you thousands. So, you mentioned something in there that will scare a lot of people, liability insurance, right? Like as soon as you mention insurance, so
Oh,
many people just are like, oh my God, I can't afford that. Like, what does that actually look like? Let's just briefly unpack like how hard was it to get and like, how expensive was it?
yeah. You know, some time ago, and Thomas, you might be my lifeline here because I'm pretty sure I went to you and
Yeah.
asked you the same question. It's not that hard. It was just like a general insurance company, and just like look it up. And God, I'm blanking on the price, Thomas. What did you get
I think it was only a couple $100 for the year.
for
It
the
was pretty
year? Okay.
inexpensive, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's just an
yeah.
annual
So
contract.
yeah, in my head, it was like $20 a month.
Yeah.
That's how I broke it down, simple math. Yeah,
So it's not
20 to 30
scary, right?
bucks.
Like it's not like this scary thing that like you're making a major investment in. It's a couple of pieces of paperwork and a couple $100 for the year. And
Yeah, Chris, I'll give you the perfect thing. It's like this apartment, you need to have separate renters insurance.
yeah.
That's $20.50 a month. When I
Yeah.
first, by the way, when I first read that, I was like, I need renter's insurance? Like, oh my God, what is that? Okay, here's another friendly advice. It's like, if you ever have any adversity whatsoever, just spend 2 minutes. Just look it up. Just look it up. Don't freak out. It's okay. Just look it up for a second. Do like just this, right? Just swipe and just like look at what that means, the cost. We've got ChatGPT now, right? I think that's such a big thing, Chris. Like you're starting to nail it. Where it's like we just often get discouraged from what? There's absolutely nothing, right? Just because there's a little bit of adversity or one little obstacle doesn't mean you got to quit the whole thing, right? If that one location that you really, really want lanes at isn't available, are you gonna quit? No, you go to the next pool and the next pool, right? Like you'll eventually get there.
So kind of next step, we talked about, finding pool space, getting your insurance, what that entails, getting the resources to do the business and kind of getting those first couple of customers. But, what are some of the things that you do with new customers that help encourage additional referrals? Because that word of mouth network is just free advertising, right? More or less. What are some of
Yeah.
Patrick Park's keys to getting referrals?
Yeah, I would say I would wait a couple months and just building up that trust because there's a a dynamic that happens where in the beginning it you kind of have to sell yourself right as a coach, and then eventually they start looking you as a coach slash mentor, right? And before you know it, you guys are out to happy hour drinks and talking about life and philosophy. Like this has happened many, many times, by the way. So, they look at you as a teacher. They have to, and so from that, the ask is very simple, but you just got to do it the right way, right? Just saying like, maybe a soft question first saying like, hey, are you enjoying the lesson so far? What have you learned so far? And they'll respond. It's like, hey, do you think it's helped? It's like, yeah, of course. Especially for triathletes, this is really easy. For triathletes, you would say, you know, who are some of the guys that you grab beers with after your race, right? Are they looking for any swim lessons? That's a really easy question. But I don't want to outright just say it. I know some people do, but for me, I just kind of ask, hey, listen, I'm just trying to grow my business. If there's any friends that I could help, I would love that. And they sort of like tell you, oh my God, I've got 3 to 5 people that I could connect you with, right? This is where you start losing the business, is when you don't follow up, right? You have to follow up. That's the key thing, is you're going to get all these leads because I know you're going to be a great coach. Every coach out there has a potential to be a great coach, right? But when you're building a business, you got to keep following up. People are willing to help you. You just got to ask the right way and you got to follow.
You're saying a lot of things that speak to sales, right? The process of sales, which I think is another one of those
Yes.
scary words that we've got out there, and we've got a connotation around sales, but every business needs sales, right? We have to tell the market what we're about, what it is that we're offering. And oftentimes following up is such a big part of that process because people have other things going on in their life. And so, but I think people feel like nervous about following up because they don't want to be annoying, right? And again, this might seem commonsensical, but could you comment a little bit to that? I mean, this is something you and I have talked about deeply. I've always gone back to you and asked you for your advice because the way that you message people is very meaningful. Like, and I know that's funny because we joke about that all the time, how it's something you don't even think it's like, unique to you, or you
I
don't
don't
even
think
think it's
about
something
it.
that's special. Yeah, but it totally is. And when I get a message from you, uh, I feel good about it. I really do. Like, and I can tell that you put the time in to that message. And so when it comes to like, some of those other softer skills and following up, anything else you could share around like what's on your mind when you're messaging people, and how do you go about those follow-ups that might be scary, for a lot of people?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I tell you how I set up the first lesson? Can I start there? And maybe there's some follow-ups. So the very first lesson, let's just say I got the referral. Everything worked out. I always ask the guy that I'm coaching that's referring new business. I always ask him or her, hey, can you put us in a group chat? And that way they kind of have like 1 or 2 lines bragging about you. Oh, Pat's a great coach. I trust them. Please go to him, schedule something, and he'll take care of you. I usually just call him. I just call him cold, right? And I call them and say, hey, listen, this is out of the blue. I'm driving right now. I just saw that text pop up. I figured, hey, let's just give him a ring. I just want to get a sense of your goals, what you're looking for. Are you a triathlete? Oh, you're just looking to learn how to swim? Fantastic. That's cool. I'll love to help you out in whatever way. And keep in mind, just, first session is on me. This is how I did it with my friend Thomas, right? When I was coaching him. But first session is on me, just in case in those 60 minutes, you hate my guts. No harm, no foul. It's all good, right? Because again, you gotta invest just a little bit, right? You gotta give them a very soft opening to be able to want to come to you, right? And once they say yes, this is how I kind of set the first lesson up, the expectations. All right, so we're gonna go to the pool. We're gonna do a 40-minute lesson, right? 40 minutes where I'm gonna look for 3 things: your extension, your body line, your breath. And honestly, I'll just doing like while you're doing your breath, your rotation as well. Right. After that, you're gonna step into my office and kind of point to the couches. This is right outside the pool. You're gonna step into my office and we're gonna talk about this sort of equation for success. This is what Bob said all the time, is what is your equation for success? I stole that from him. And I started to kind of put that in not only swim coaching, but with other sales related jobs as well. And I just point blank asked them after the 40-minute session of, hey, listen, I had a college coach. He talked to me about, setting up your equation for success. I'm really curious, like, what's your equation? And you start bringing up all kinds of answers. Oh, I got to do my 3 bike rides. I got to do this. I got to do this. And then that's equal. equals success. It's like, that's fantastic. Based on the 40 minutes and based off what you learned today, how do I fit? How can I help you? Where do I fit into your equation for success? Key thing, pause. Don't talk. Don't ramble. Just ask, pause. And they'll come up with the most beautiful answer. Man, that 40 minutes, I know we went over a few things, but I know this could really, really help me. Right. And what I end with, and this is when like sales and um like genuine and your heart starts to show. But really I start telling them, what's my why? Why do I start coaching? Swimming got me out of Jersey. I owe it a lot. It's made me um very thankful to meet guys like today, you, Chris, and Thomas, right? It's I have met so many extraordinary people. It's almost my duty to be able to give back to this, right? And so, I kind of tell them a little bit of my why. And, you know, I am your swim coach, yes. I am. But to be honest, I want to be more than that. Right. One of these days, like, can we go out to lunch? Can we go out for drinks? Right. That's what I really, really want to do. And I just don't want to be a coach in swimming. I want to be a coach in life. How can I help you become a successful, healthy human being? Wherever I can help, I'm there. Right? Trust is instantly built. They know you're coming from a very genuine place, right? It doesn't have to be so transactional. I just got back from a lunch yesterday with my friend Nick. Runs a construction company and wanted to learn how to swim. Guess where I met him? I met him at the village years ago, and he just reached out to me, and I ran through the same thing. And guess what his response was during lunch yesterday? It was, Pat, for whatever reason, you don't make this seem transactional at all. I mean, it should be, but man, like I feel like I could reach out to you with a lot of things. So that's the biggest compliment in the world.
And that's something I just to comment on. I think you do this incredibly well, and I think it's something that a lot of coaches, internally probably feel very similarly. Like, from the moment I met you, I knew you were a genuine person, and like over the years that we've known each other, that's just been reinforced. And that's always been, I think, for me, one of the biggest challenges of getting into like a sales role was feeling like I was doing something that I like that was bad,
Yeah.
or disingenuous. And I think I think a lot of coaches have that genuine care for the people that they serve, the families they serve. That's why they get into coaching. And I actually think you're a great example of showing that that's one of the biggest assets you can have. It might feel uncomfortable at first for a lot of people who haven't maybe been in a sales role before. And so, they kind of have their guards up and they feel awkward about it. But I think if you double down on that genuineness and just have systems in mind in terms of like how you need to follow up and just making sure that you're not dropping the ball on your end, because oftentimes in your own business, you have to be the one pushing it forward. I love what you said, because it's not something where you have to be disingenuous. Like, you can be genuine through the whole process. And I think you're a great example of how that works. And obviously, like, the success you had, I think really does come from that. And I know that you do care about what you're doing and who you serve. And I think a lot of other coaches are very similar in that.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a total cheese ball, but it's like sometimes I care too much, right? That seriously, sometimes, right? My heart can't take it. I tell people all the time, I'd rather be in the pool racing than watching a race. Oh my God, my blood pressure goes up. I want it so bad for them. Thomas, I always tell you after the high school state championships, I don't know how the head coach Russ, who was just like a brother to me, Russ never gets sick. But for me, I always get sick after the state championships. I don't know why. I think it's just because I get so into it. Like my heart just dives into it for these swimmers and these kids. I think that's just how it's supposed to be, right? You got to dive into it head first, and you're gonna get hurt sometimes. But if you do it the right way, you're a good person, you're genuine. Good things will come. You will start getting lucky.
Karma's real sometimes when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
to what you put out into the universe comes back to you. One other thing I want to touch on, just, you mentioned like one of your clients owns a construction company and you're working with some high level individuals. What are some of like the ancillary benefits that come with doing private lessons? Like, what type of connections have you built that, maybe aren't going to pay off today, but, like these are people, like most of the time, these are people that are very successful in life, especially triathletes. They're usually highly professional people. You're building this network. And what do you think that means to you moving forward in life? Like you're a pretty young guy. Like you don't have all the wrinkles that I have and all the bags. Talk a little bit about that, like just the really cool people that you meet in this process as well.
Man, I've met a very, very cool people. And I think the universe, right? Like the universe just kind of tracks good people to good people. And it's so funny. I'll tell you this. It's so funny. I just got the phone with him yesterday, and he was my first swim client at the village. My first. Guess where I met him? At the locker room. And you know what I asked at the time? It was like, hey, you mentioned something about restaurants. Are you a chef? And he's like, "Oh no, I actually own like a couple restaurants here in town." I'm like, "Whoa, that's fantastic!" Like, just one of these days, it's an industry that I'll never go in, but I'd love to grab lunch with you one of these days and just kind of pick your brain on how I built this. It's almost like I'm creating my own podcast, right? So it's here's another before I answer your question, Chris. It's another sense of advice is be curious. Be curious. Be genuinely curious, and people will share. And so, yeah, I ended up coaching him, and him and I are going to go out to lunch in a month or so. But he's one of those guys that I reach out to every single year because you just want to surround yourself with good, successful people that can mentor you as well. But again, it's so cool. It's such a unique dynamic because at one point I was coaching him, and I was looked at as the coach and the mentor. But this guy, he could coach me everything else in life, right? And so it's just this perfect balance. And I mention him because he actually mentioned in the locker room, he's like, well, this is actually perfect time. You're some coach. I'm like, yeah, I coach here at the village. Man, the universe works in very mysterious ways. This is really, really cool. Why don't you coach me? That's how it happened. Like right then and there in a 5-minute conversation. So yeah, Chris, I've met so many cool people, and it's helped me in so many different ways. With Swim Warrior, with payment processing, even with medical device. The way I got the job at this at Longevity, that's the med tech. I was swimming last with my friend Brandon, and now he's working at Medtronic, but he's the one that connected me with the West director of sales. That's how I got the job, right? And so it's so crazy that this sport can connect so many people in such an extraordinary way.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned luck a lot throughout this conversation, right? Like you've come back to this idea of being lucky.
Mm.
But I think a piece of advice that like young coaches, can take from this is those connections are going to create opportunities, those lucky moments for you later in life. Like all those connections you build by coaching masters and coaching kids and building these genuine relationships, that's going to lead to like long-term life success because you're always going to have someone that's looking out for you and is going to think of you when you're like, hey, I'm looking for a new career path, or hey, I want to do this other thing, or maybe you connect a friend with them, right? But it's like you create this luck just by being a part of other people's lives. And this private lesson is a great way to do that. Like there's benefits beyond just the bankroll that you've created, um and income. There's benefits that are going to pay off in life for you for the rest of your life. So
Yeah,
that's really, really cool.
I'll even add in, Chris, something very recent, super cool. So I would say my mentor in finance, Andy Reinhardt, he's a partner over at Beacon Point in North Scottsdale. And look up to this guy. He gave me a break. He started working there and have learned so much from him. And at some point, I coached him swimming. I coached his son swimming, his son Jake, so that he can start lifeguarding at the local Lifetime Fitness. And now he is set to graduate here at ASU. And I met him, met those guys during Thanksgiving because I kept in contact with them, and Jake was telling me everything he was doing, and I told him a little bit about payment processing, and I actually connected him to get him a job within this career in the industry. And so again, it now I feel like I'm in the position where I can give back too. And it again, you got to invest in people. You got to build those relationships. And I don't want to sound like this like connection guru. It's all about business connection. I don't ever get into my car or walk into the pool expecting to get new clients. That is not how I go about my day. The way I think about it is, how can I gain a new friend today? It's not a connection. It's like, how can I get a friend today? Right? How can I help people today? Dan Kessler, ASU, the guy that recruited me, the biggest thing he's taught me is, what can you do to make a difference? I actually wrote that at ASU, my orientation week. They give you an index card and you got to write 3 things. By the time you graduate, like, what do you want to accomplish? You're supposed to write 3 things. I only wrote one. All I wrote was, I want to make a difference. Put it in the envelope, right? And that's how I live my life. What can you do to make a difference? You know what's so fun about that? With swim coaching, you can directly make a difference by coaching percent.
That was exactly why I got into coaching. Was at the time went the corporate route right after college and felt disenfranchised from it. I didn't feel like we were doing fulfilling work, and yeah, I'd been coaching through high school and college as well, and ended up just deciding at that time I was going to go full time coaching, and it really is one of the most meaningful jobs. And one of the last questions I'd like to ask you, because it's one of those, again, it's kind of like that sales question. Again, this job is fulfilling, it's meaningful because we get to impact people's lives. We get to help
No.
them, either if it's early on in their life, become water safe, even as adults, right? There's adults that we've taught lessons to that are just learning to become comfortable and safe in the water as well, all the way up to, yeah, personal performance and goals, and being a big part of that person's life there. This question is going to be about pricing. You talked about starting off at $100 an hour for these lessons, and then moved it up to $150 an hour. And I think sometimes it's hard for us as coaches to look at pricing in a way that we really need to, because we're thinking about that impact. And we would, if we could survive doing it, I know the majority of coaches would probably give those private lessons away for free.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a great part about the whole experience of being a coach. But how should coaches be thinking about pricing? Because there's a lot to pricing. That's not just how much, you're perceivably making in that hour of time. There's other things like your opportunity cost in life. You spent 12 hours a weekend coaching private lessons to get this going. That's that's a big opportunity cost. If you're going to spend 12 hours in a weekend, you can't spend those 12 hours doing something else. So, yeah, can you just tell us a little bit about like your thinking behind pricing, and maybe some other things that these coaches should be also keeping in mind when it comes to those other opportunity costs in life?
Yeah, I would say I've the reason for the transition was because I've learned my lesson on the value of time, and I'm still learning that lesson. I don't think I've mastered it. But in terms of swim lessons, I it's the value of time, and because I was already so booked up, I almost needed a strategy of, okay, I still want to coach, but I don't think I could coach as much anymore. Right. Chris, you're saying that, I might be a younger guy. I don't have the wrinkles, but man, my back's starting to hurt. My knees hurt. Right. My ankles hurt. Like, what's going on? I'm 30 now. And it just felt like, even just 5 years ago, it was just the same thing. I was just getting burnt out. So I just thought, if I raised my prices, would it slow it down? And no, like it didn't happen. If anything, it enhanced. And I think Chris referenced this earlier. It was just kind of the value of, oh, because you up the price, is that going to enhance whatever? Just and at the time, because the book of businesses was growing, that was a great opportunity for me to hire a couple contract coaches, or which they're all my good friends anyway. So, and I shared earlier, just sharing that wealth too. So there's a component to that question where I felt like I needed to, for growth reasons from a business standpoint, but fundamentally, it's coaches, right? Like I'm looking at the camera here, coaches, like you deserve this. You spend all of your time coaching a team. You spend 12 hours a day on the weekend for swim meets. The 1 hour that you have is so incredibly valuable. Charles, I'm gonna need you to edit out the amount of times they say value and valuable, but coaches, I'm gonna put 10 toes down, like 10 toes down on this, right? Like you are so valuable. Every hour counts, every minute counts, and you can charge whatever you want, right? Obviously, you can't go haywire with it, but whatever price you do charge and you're committed to it and you establish good expectations, charge it. You deserve it.
That's awesome advice. And I think it's something, coaches, we fall into like that teacher mentality of like being a community service member almost. And kind of think of ourselves as like stewards of the community. And you also deserve to make your money because you are an expert in your craft. And, like if I hire a plumber, I hire an expert plumber, it's $150 an hour. And or it's $150 to fix the pipe, but they can fix it in 5 minutes because they're an expert, right? Like people use that analogy often. It's like people can pay you $150 an hour because it's going to take you a lesson to fix 90% of their errors in their stroke, or at least give them an idea of where they need to be going with their stroke, right? It's not going to take five
Right.
or six. It's like in a lesson, I can get you swimming like 25% faster or more efficient, one of the two. And that's what people are paying for. It's not necessarily your time, it's also your expertise of the craft of swimming.
100%. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, well, you want to go one last question, Thomas? Like the piece of advice?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got
I was just gonna basically say, yeah. Is there anything else like throughout anything that we haven't maybe shared in this conversation so far that you would like to, to tell coaches? Any other, further advice that you'd like to give?
Man, I feel like I have a collection of things, but of course, when it's time to answer that, nothing comes to mind. But I'll kind of go back to my fundamentals. It's whatever you can do to make a difference. Be a genuine person. Trust in yourself, right? Invest in those people so that you can get trust. So I think it just all comes down to those things, man. Just be a good person, right? And to be a good coach, you have to look out for others. You have to serve, and that's the expectation. And from the business standpoint, yeah, like you've earned this. You can charge. That's okay. This is why I say that I feel like I've learned my lesson because times I personally have given out a lot of free lessons, right? I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world. Like I did the same thing. The amount of times after high school practices, I'm already there. I'm just gonna coach them right then and there, right? It's you feel like it's your duty. Just do that extra level follow up of talking to the parents, talking to the triathlete of, hey, I think I can help you in this way. Right? Sure, you got to sell yourself, but as long as you're a good person, you invest in others, good things will happen. And I'll leave it off with this: you will get lucky. I truly believe that.
Patrick, thank you for joining us and sharing your story and giving some advice into the world of swim coaches, especially, as people start in coaching and how to make it a career. Because I think we need more opportunities for coaches to make swim coaching a career. And that's one of the struggles of the industry is how do we give coaches some financial stability, some financial opportunity outside of just practice times.
Yeah,
Because there's limited finances. Like there's revenue, there's cost, there's profit, and you have to operate within that box in the real world. But I think if clubs and coaches can find ways to be a little bit entrepreneurial, sacrifice 5 hours a week, they can have a huge impact on their life and their financial stability and longevity in the sport.
absolutely.
Cool. Thank you,
And
Patrick.
Yeah. No, seriously. Hey, thanks, guys. This is awesome.
Thanks for watching our conversation with Patrick Park on how to start, grow, and manage your own private lessons business. Joining me now is my colleague Kyle Mills. He's a senior account executive here at Captain, and he's going to walk us through the Captain platform and talk to us a little bit about how Captain can help us facilitate our own personal private lesson business, or if you're a part of a team and the team is looking to extend the offering to the members on that team. We're going to talk about how Captain can also facilitate private lessons across an entire organization. So thanks for joining us, Kyle. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Let me share my screen and let's just kind of get into it. So the first thing I've got pulled up here is we're just going to go through a couple websites. We do build websites for teams or individual lesson owners and many types of organizations. This example is questswimming.com. They're based in Richmond, Virginia. We run their swim school, their swim team, and really everything they do is run through Captain. Another great example of a website is Excel Aquatics. They're based outside of Nashville. We also run their swim school, master, summer league, a lot of stuff through Captain as well. And the last one I got pulled up here is Naples Swim School. For Naples, we run their swim school, all of their private lessons as well. If we go into classes here, we can look at private lessons, scroll down, and then register and schedule for those private lessons. So this is like on their public website. We can click register from this. This is going to take you to a unique landing page within their instance of Captain, and it's going to show just their 2 private lessons. They run different learn to swim programs as well. These are their specific one-on-one or semi-private lessons using our custom private lesson module, which is what we're going to look at in a bit here. But from here, you could add a lesson. These are on this demo account. These are all of my kids or potential participants in this example. Let's just put 2 in here. So in this case, we're registering for a semi-private lesson. Here, we're just confirming like this will be together. If you wanted to create independent ones as the customer, in this case, you could do that as well. We'll stick with that and let's buy 5 lesson package here. These are questions that Naples Swim School has chose to ask. So here you're just capturing information. In this case, we want to start on Monday or Wednesday. That's what we're interested in doing. Here, January is all booked up. We can say, let's get started on February 3rd to 8th. And then this next one is, again, just more questions that Naples is choosing to ask. They're saying, hey, what is a good 2-hour time window for you? Do you have any special requests? If yes, please describe. Do you need your instructor to be in the water with you? What are your goals? All these things are what Naples is choosing to ask their customer so that they can capture that information and then properly assign that to the correct instructor. Or there's a couple options that we'll look at in a bit.
Say you've got a relationship with a few different facilities. That could be a place where someone could request a particular location.
Yeah, we've got a lot of groups that do that, actually. One that comes to mind, actually, they'll put their zip code in there, and then that's how they will assign the instructor that's in that area to go to that particular client. That's like an at-home swim lesson provider that does that. All right, so jumping in, this is like the back end of Captain. We're looking just at this custom private lessons module. We're still in Naples Swim School. This is a demo account for them. And they have 64 private lesson packages in progress right now. So we can scroll through this. Isaac is the swimmer, has 4 total. There are 3 left to schedule, and Rosamond is the instructor. There's a lot of filters, a lot of ways to manage just a lot of private lessons just in one place. What we're going to look at is when someone signs up for a new one. So here's pending assignment. This is an example of Yolanda just purchased a package of 10 lessons. We see there's only 7 left to schedule here. It's because this is in existence. If we click these view customer requests, this will pull up all of these questions that we saw Naples chose to ask. Their preferred instructor is Katie. This is like the goals, like during the lessons there. And then here's their 2-hour time window. It's an hour and a half time window there that they selected. So all of that's captured. You then click on the actual lesson package. You can see Naples did schedule a couple of these out, like I had mentioned. But typically what happens here is you can you could assign it to an instructor. Here you're going to just pick, I think they recommended Katie. In that case, you would pick Katie, just pick this instructor. You send that a notification to Virgin here. They're going to get that notification. Now that instructor has the ability to log in and actually manage this, schedule this dynamically with the client. The client has the ability to request a reschedule on a specific lesson if they choose to. And all of that communication and scheduling exists within Captain. The other cool alternative you can do here is to post it for a claim. In this case, Naples Swim School, if we selected all here, they have 16 instructors. So if we selected all of them, this would post a claim and send a notification to all 16 instructors. Let's say maybe this is a learn to swim. Maybe these 4 instructors are your learn to swim instructors there. So you could send just them a notification. Now they get that, they can review that schedule, all the answers to those questions. They can then claim that lesson package, and then they work through that actual scheduling aspect of it. And then the last option here when a package is booked is to just schedule it out. It looks like that's what Naples has done here. They've just started to schedule some of them. But you're able to just do that right there. Those are just then going to land on our scheduling page called the Today screen.
You start with the website, make it really easy for people to know what it is that you're offering. And then from that website, having a call to action button that just takes you directly into the registration flow. And I like how when showing the private lessons module off, there's so much potential automation going on there, right? The communication of your services through the website, the registration flow that allows people to just buy and then schedule versus trying to have that back and forth. And during that back and forth, you might lose that business. This is a great walkthrough of how you can generate more business just by not dropping the ball on those various tasks and communications that have to take place.
Yeah, and I do kind of just want to add with a couple things you said there. In public templates, this is where they're actually setting these up. Here's the 30-minute one that we signed up for earlier, the 45-minute we signed up for earlier. Like, you have a ton of options for how you want to actually structure this. You'd mentioned charging up front. That's oftentimes recommended, and that's probably the most utilized one. You could charge later as well. You could charge manually upon completion of each lesson. That's just a preference that you have. That's just one of the many settings that are in here that allows you to customize the offerings to your specific program. Additionally, on this landing page here, you can view public site as well. So if you didn't have a website, you don't have to get a website. You can build this out for our lowest tier plan, build out a custom private lesson template, and then click on the public site link here. This is what you would be sharing to customers around, and allows them to just right through here, purchase and pay for your customized private lesson package.
If you wanted to offer a free private lesson as kind of a gift up front, get them in the door, see if this is going to make sense for both you and the potential client, you could create essentially a free offering, right? That you could then share a link with that can just get them in the door and make sure that when it's relevant and when that communication is going on, a call to action by the client can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be kind of the same thing. It would be a single lesson package. You could even rename this as a tryout or a single trial option.
So another thing that's really important when you're starting a business is your cash flow, right? You want to have money on hand for any expenses that you might have. And so being able to offer a bulk number of lessons for your clients so they can just buy maybe 5 or 6 lessons up front is obviously beneficial to you as a business owner. But by being able to also discount that rate if they do purchase a certain number of lessons is something that I think a lot of private lesson businesses do. And so, Kyle, do you mind kind of walking us through how Captain can facilitate that and just automate that price reduction?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all in this initial registration page here. So these are all of the different settings that exist with building one of these private lesson offerings out. Here they chose, an unlimited amount people can add. You could lock them into specific packages of say 5 lessons if you wanted to. They're allowing for multi-participant registrations for the semi-privates. And they're automatically discounting it based on the number of participants as well. If there's 2, it's going to be $80 instead of $50 if there's 1. That's $50 per lesson. And if we scroll down to this part, Thomas, this is what you were referring to, is we can do automatic session discounts of when a registration includes at least 5 sessions in this case. So we have a 10% discount automatically applied. And then they have an additional one when they include up to 10 lessons, there's going to be a 20% discount applied. Just being able to, in a very simple way, set those discounts that are just going to help encourage people to get to that full package level. You could have that free trial lesson and then also then upsell for these packages afterwards, encourage people to buy those full packages in there. This is one piece of a very large application that is Captain. If we go back to the home screen here, Naples Swim School is running a lot more than private lessons. A lot of it lives in programming where you set up these recurring monthly things. We have membership functionality. There's a customer database that offers a lot of bulk communication options, automated communications. We also have an entire meet management platform as well. If you want to learn more, definitely encourage you just hop over to captain.com/demo. You can click that get started link. Get started for free here is going to take you to that page as well. Just go ahead and schedule a personalized demo by clicking here or just by scrolling down. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Kyle. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time.